Most of the world's population have relatively normal hearing, and the sounds of everyday life is something that most of us take for granted. However, for over 5% of the world's population, 360 million people, they have a disabling hearing loss in either one or both ears or are profoundly deaf. For those with partial hearing loss, this is what life sounds like. Thankfully, to the commitment, passion and determination of an Australian hero, the gift of sound has been given back to over 500,000 people around the world.
Just say yes out here.
Hi. Hi.
I know.
Hi, Cooper. Hi, Cooper.
No one has ever been able to restore one of our 5 senses. Until Professor Graeme Clark devoted his energy, determination and faith to the development of the cochlear implant. Many of us are familiar with Professor Graeme Clark and how he led the team to develop the first cochlear implant in 1978. It is commonplace now to see adults and children wearing the latest generation of the bionic ear. Around 500,000 people in the world now have improved hearing thanks to this amazing device. We're here in the National Museum of Australia, where you can see the first cochlear implant. A device that was supposed to be impossible. A device that brought together a groundbreaking combination of inner ear surgery, cybernetics, electronic engineering, speech processing and neuroscience. A device that proved that we could directly bypass malfunctioning ears and bring sound to the profoundly deaf by direct stimulation of the brain. In other words, bringing sounds from silence. Professor Clark's work is inspirational and contributed so much to our understanding of the brain. Today I want to share with you part of Professor Clark's story that didn't make media headlines. His commitment to a practice that at the time might have been considered insignificant, but has now been shown to be very important to helping our brains work at their full potential and bringing powerful insight and creativity. Today we'll spend some time with Professor Clark revisiting history.
I was born in 1935 here in Camden in 62 John Street in our home. And I remember that as I grew up, I was a very hyperactive child. I caused my mother a little bit of stress when I climbed trees and rocked them. I caused her frustrations when she locked me in the bathroom and I'd escape and disappear. I was always curious as a child. I always wanted to know why or where. This curiosity and this drive must have been there at an early age, because at 2 I was always on the go, and Mum didn't always answer my requests, and I said to her once, "I'm bored, I'm leaving." My mother complimented my father. She was I suppose, the creative person. She was a very gifted pianist and also a very gifted watercolour painter, and a loving, caring mother who was always willing to sacrifice herself for her children. My father was a great inspiration. He was deaf and a pharmacist here in Camden, and I knew only too well how difficult it was for him. But in addition, he was a very ethical person, both in business and in his life generally. And as a young person, I found that most helpful later on, to be ethical, I hope, in my research career. I think I had a wonderful relationship with both my father and my mother. I couldn't have asked for better parents, and I only hope that I could be half as good as my father and my mother.
Since Camden had no high school, Graeme headed to Sydney, where he first attended Sydney Boys High and later boarded at the Scots College. It is here that he furthered his education and desire to get into medicine, and also became a keen sportsman.
The education I had at this college helped me in a way that I never realised would be so relevant to studying medicine, and then later on carrying through research to develop what is a bionic ear. It was all based on what I'd built in my learning relationships here at Scots.
And it wasn't just academics that you got involved with here at Scots. You also were involved in the sporting activities of the school.
Yes, indeed. I had a very rounded education. I was not a brilliant sportsman, but I played cricket with enthusiasm and football, and I was quite a reasonable athlete. And I found that that helped me to adjust to the relationships in the school. And it's always said, healthy body, healthy mind.
Now, I understand there's a building at this school named after you. Tell me a little about that.
There is the Graeme Clark Centre for Innovation in the Sciences being created. I feel very humble about it. It's a wonderful testimony to the relationship between science, faith, and I'm very proud of this building, which is aiming to bring boys up to a new understanding of science, to make them more creative, more innovative. And I think that's my hope, that this will continue to do so.
What is your understanding of the relationship then between faith and science? Why is that important for all students coming through school?
Well, my understanding is that truth is truth, and science is aiming to find out the truth in the physical world, but the physical world is complementary to the faith world and the spiritual world, and we aren't just machines. We are fearfully and wonderfully made.
In 1952, Professor Clark enrolled in medicine at the University of Sydney. At that time, the university was alive with vibrant discussion groups around different philosophies.
My time at Sydney University was very formative, a very exciting experience for a young person from the country to learn about medicine. That was my main aim, so that I could become a doctor and try and help people with ear problems and hearing disabilities. I started in 1952 and went through the courses and finally graduated in 1957 and went through the hospital training program. When I came, my goal was to study medicine, to become an ear doctor so I could help people like my father. I've always called deafness the silent handicap because the average person doesn't know what it's like to be deaf. But I knew, because I'd lived with my father and I had a great affection for him and saw how it affected him in such a great variety of aspects of life, whether it be in social circumstances in Camden, running the shop, in the home, and I desperately wanted to do something. But how could a teenager do something to help a father when there was no medical assistance for people like him? It was also here that I was introduced to the student Christian movement and found that that was leading me to a spiritual awareness. It was only when I went on a student Christian movement camp in my first year of medicine that we were asked by the leader if we'd invite Christ into our lives. I didn't realize that was a very significant moment in my life. I did so thinking, well, there's no harm in doing that, because I was a nominal Christian. I wasn't sure whether I believed in miracles or supernatural, but I had this extraordinary experience when I did so in quiet time, that I felt the real presence of Christ in my life. It was an experience of perfume, beauty, peace, and I haven't experienced that since, but I'd said, this is real, I must explore it further, and that led me to further Bible studies, to carrying out my Christian faith in the future, which was quite a roller coaster ride.
After finishing at Sydney University, Graeme and his family moved to Melbourne, where he began his career as an ear, nose and throat surgeon. While on holiday with his wife and children at Minamara Beach in New South Wales, Graeme made a discovery that changed history and the lives of hundreds of thousands of people.
What a magnificent beach.
It is a magnificent beach, and even more so as it was the beach where the famous cochlear implant shell story started. It was here that I was meant to be watching the children surfing and was sitting here playing with a shell that I found looking like the cochlea, putting grass blades into it, and found that if it was stiff at the base, flexible at the tip, it would go round the turns, the thing that we were struggling to discover. And there's a shell.
There's one of the, okay.
And there's a piece of grass, a blade of grass, which would go around the cochlea, and hey presto.
There it is.
There it is. It's gone round the turns, something that we couldn't achieve in models and was said to be not possible, and it was so simple.
And it was that discovery, really, that changed the course of history for deaf people, for profoundly deaf people.
It did change the course because it meant we could use multi-electrodes to stimulate different frequencies in people who are profoundly deaf with that electrode system.
And I bet you were excited to get back to the lab and test it out.
I was so excited that I asked Margaret if we could leave a few days earlier just to go back to Melbourne and test it out, because at that stage we had to have the pressure on us to develop a prototype implant for our first patient, and we were running out of time.
This is the Melbourne Eye and Ear Hospital, where Professor Clark and his team spent 14 years pushing challenges and obstacles. Many said it was impossible. They had a lack of money. They were criticised by their peers, and they faced what seemed like insurmountable technical challenges. But they remained dedicated to their cause.
I worked at this hospital, I think it's now over 50 years I've been associated. Part of that time was as the professor of otolaryngology, first established here, and then setting up a clinic for the hospital, and then the first cochlear implant clinic in the world. So I've had a very long and happy association with this hospital. You know, much of the research that we were doing was new and it's pioneering. Although we always build on the work of others, this was thought to be impossible. And therefore, everything we were doing was new and breaking new ground. And it was difficult too, because people said that it wouldn't work. And I found that it was also making it hard to do the groundbreaking work. But I want to give credit too to a wonderful team. It wasn't just me. I led the team, had to provide assistance and ideas, but we were a wonderfully enthusiastic team. There were many struggles that were related to the research to convince people that what we were doing was good, and the scientific community were very skeptical. But in addition, I learned you can't do this research without money. The big breakthrough, which I believe was an outsaid prayer, was when Sir Reginald Ansett from Channel O, or 10, decided he wanted to have a telethon to raise money for deafness, which we called nerve deafness, and that gave us the money to kickstart the whole program. And it was only then when we could show that our first patient could actually hear and understand speech that the grant bodies, the National Health and Medical Research Council, decided to fund us. So it was funny to think that we had to prove that it would work before we got money for basic further research. These struggles were demanding in many ways, and for me, it became more and more a question of relying on my Christian faith, my prayer life. I did what we were recommended by the scriptures, to pray unceasingly. And I found in my walk with Christ that the more difficult, the more challenging, the less I could rely on myself, the more I found prayers got answered in ways that I really didn't expect or anticipate. And that was another great spiritual awakening for me.
In 1978, after 14 years of research, frustration and tears, Dr. Clark and his team were now ready to make history by inserting the first prototype of the cochlear implant into a willing patient by the name of Rod Saunders. Rod had become profoundly deaf as a result of a car accident a few years earlier.
On the 1st of August 1978, extremely stressful time, and I found to be the surgeon too. It's helpful for the patient if you're, as a surgeon, at peace when you're doing the work. And before the final surgery, I went away with my wife for a prayer weekend where we prayed, we relaxed, and felt God's hand in it. I came back on the Monday morning and the engineers were all in panic state, trying to make sure that the bionic ear was finally going to work for the following day, the Tuesday. But the sister, who was a wonderful sister on the Tuesday morning, said afterwards how nervous she was, and she was amazed how peaceful I and Brian Pyman, my colleague, were. I didn't tell her that I wasn't exactly at peace, but that peace was needed to do the right thing for the patient and to see things clearly. Because when you operate, it's not a routine thing. It's not a car that we operate with. And there are variables that you have to be prepared to deal with. So you need that peace. When I look back on the efforts and the results, firstly, I must say at the start, I never realized what would be achieved. I prayed for guidance, that God's will would be done. If it wasn't a success, then I did my best with God's help. But it turned out far more dramatic and wonderful than I could ever have imagined. And it's been wonderful to help adults who've had hearing and gone deaf, but the greatest satisfactions, the greatest fulfillment has been young children who are born deaf and then been benefited from the cochlear implant. Prior to this work, profoundly deaf children did not have any alternative other than sign language of the deaf. They could not so easily relate to hearing colleagues and peer group. But to see these children, normally speaking, you would not know they had a hearing problem. It brings tears to my eyes.
Professor Clark and his team are responsible for restoring hearing to hundreds of thousands of people worldwide. And innovation has continued with the cochlear ear plant, now smaller and more powerful than ever before. This groundbreaking, life-changing technology was made possible through the leadership of an amazing man who constantly took time to step outside his work and allow time for listening to the voice and guidance of God. Professor Clark restored the sense of hearing to so many and always made time to listen himself. Perhaps we can even follow Professor Clark's example and integrate prayer into our stillness. If you are wondering about how to experience the power of prayer in your life, like Dr. Graeme Clark did, if you're wanting to reach out to God, but just aren't sure about how to do it, then I'd like to recommend the free gift we have for all our incredible journey viewers today. It's the free booklet, How to Pray. This small booklet will share with you how to talk with God and how to really feel a connection with Him. Knowing how to pray will bring you the peace, security and hope we're all seeking, and it will change your life forever. This booklet is free, and I guarantee there are no costs or obligations whatsoever. So make the most of this wonderful opportunity to receive the free gift we have for you today.
Phone or text 0436 333 555 in Australia or 020 422 2042 in New Zealand. Or visit our website tij.tv or simply scan the QR code on your screen and we'll send you today's free offer totally free of charge and with no obligation. Write to us at GPO Box 274, Sydney, New South Wales 2001, Australia, or PO Box 76673, Manukau, Auckland 2241, New Zealand. Don't delay. Call or text us now.
If you've enjoyed our journey with Dr. Graeme Clark into the world of sound and the development of the bionic ear, and our reflections on how powerful prayer can be, then be sure to join us again next week when we will share another of life's journeys together. Until then, I would like to share Dr. Graeme Clark's favourite prayer with you that is included in his memoir. Let's pray this prayer together right now. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive our debts as we forgive our debtors. And do not lead us into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. For yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen.